Ravine Caverns is without a doubt the most intimidating dungeon in the entire game outside of the Seraphic Gate. It is so infamous that popular YouTuber David Vince put it on his top 10 worst PlayStation 2 dungeons of all time list, and for good reason. You have 8 minutes to get through the longest dungeon you have encountered so far. Now if you bring up the map for this area, you will see a single tiny room. That's where you are, and you will see an icon showing the entrance. On the other side, you will see the exit, and loads of empty space in between. All of that empty space is filled with small rooms similar to the one you are in, and there are multiple layers to this map, as there are paths that go up and down, leading to other rooms, some leading to dead ends, others leading to treasure chests rigged with traps, and others lead to seal stones. Put simply, Ravine Caverns is a huge maze, and you are not ready for it. Now, I'm sure that there are some people who managed to get through this dungeon first time without a guide, but I certainly didn't. I putted out because I desperately wanted to get through the ordeal of navigating this treacherous maze in one piece. Thankfully, you are able to use photons, but that won't save you from reaching a dead end and having to backtrack to another path in hopes of making it to the end in time. I hate this dungeon with a passion, and the game knows that I hate it because, well, the music. The Ravine Caverns is certainly a grim place, filled with poisonous swamps that will poison your entire party if you step in them. It's not exactly the most notable dungeon in the game in the visual department, but the music is without a doubt the most fitting song I have ever heard for a dungeon. It is an intense, emotional piece, fittingly titled Life Which Desires Death and Death Which Desires Life. This title perfectly describes the context of the game's story at this point, and the song perfectly expresses the emotional state of both the protagonist and you as the player, getting through one of the most painful experiences in the game. Only when you understand the context of the game's story and have experienced the pain of trudging through this horrendous dungeon yourself will you truly appreciate this piece of music. So all in all, Ravine Caverns is an intense moment for both the player and Alicia. In fact, you could take Alicia or the entire narrative out of the equation, and this section of the game would still leave a lasting impression on you. It is an emotional journey that invokes a strong sense of panic and desperation that will stick with you throughout the entire dungeon. Upon reaching the other side of the Ravine Caverns, a scene plays where Alicia is assisting the crippled Rufus all the way out to the exit. The irony of the short and scrawny Alicia dragging this tall elf guy is certainly apparent here, but that's kind of the point. This part of the game shows that Alicia has grown as a character, and not a single word has been said since the start of this section. But no words are needed, as you, the player, watched her navigate one of the most treacherous and intense dungeons ever. You could feel her struggles and her will to become stronger just by playing the game and taking in the ambience. Valkyrie Profile 2 shows that some things are best expressed without words, and Ravine Caverns is pretty much Alicia's equivalent of Rocky's training montage, which you, the player, got to participate in, which further bolsters the player's connection to Alicia's character. Partway through the cutscene, a new song plays titled Turning Back is a Mistake. If you understand the context of the story, then the title of this song is also rather fitting, as turning back at this point is impossible. This brings about a massive shift in tone, as this song heavily emphasises a state of tranquility. This is further emphasised by the location itself. Bifrost is the bridge that crosses between the realm of mortals and the realm of the gods, and what a sight to behold it is. After the many perils that players went through to reach this point of the game, Bifrost provides the player with a brief moment of respite, and while there are a few enemies to fight along the way, the dungeon itself is fairly straightforward. There is also a healing point as well as a save point upon entering this location. My one criticism with this section of the game would be the fact that there are several enemies to fight here, as while I do love the combat of Valkyrie Profile 2, I would have preferred to have walked through a combat-free zone here. Thankfully, you can return to this point in the game and take in all the sights without being interrupted by mandatory battles. Bifrost is best described as being an aesthetic masterpiece, and this is thanks to the phenomenal transitions that create a fantastic illusion that players can easily miss. While Bifrost is a very short dungeon that can be traversed very quickly in-game, the clever use of transitions in this area does a fantastic job at showcasing the scale of this gigantic bridge. As you approach from the entrance, the bridge slowly begins tilting upwards until you reach this unusually trippy visual effect that surrounds the entire bridge. This visual effect allows for a massive transition to be made, as if you look very carefully after entering this section of the bridge, you will see a sphere in the background. It took me ages to figure out what this sphere was, but then I was amazed to find out that it was actually the moon. The entire moon was in the distance, and I could barely see it due to the weird visual effects that surrounded me. Needless to say, that continuing further along the bridge caused yet another transition to occur. This transition would be the one that transitions from the centre of the bridge to the Asgard side. Suddenly, you are presented with several floating islands in the distance, many of which have water falling through the edges. It quickly becomes apparent to the player that they are miles away from Midgard, and have finally made it all the way to Asgard. Now, on a personal note, ever since I started playing the first Valkyrie profile and seeing Asgard for the first time, I wondered to myself, can you actually go there and explore those islands? Sadly, the only time you can explore Asgard is right at the end of the game, where it is in ruins, so I personally felt that reaching Asgard in Valkyrie Profile 2 was a dream come true. Sure, it is only a few screens of nothing but gorgeous landscapes with only a single merchant and 2 dungeon entrances, but the moment I arrived in Asgard, I couldn't help but stand still amongst the flying petals and take it all in. The music that plays in Asgard, titled A Stable Float, was the perfect track to accompany this section of the game, as it somehow manages to be even more tranquil and relaxing than the music that played in the previous area. Asgard presents the player with a brief moment of respite before they make their final trek to the top of Yggdrasil, and what a moment it is. One thing is for certain, however, it is not Asgard alone that made this part of the game so impactful. Rather, the journey as a whole makes reaching this point of the game feel so damn satisfying. I could stand in Asgard and take in its incredible views forever. But the game is far from over. The emotional rollercoaster continues.